Hey, I'm John Cannell, and today on Preppy Kitchen, we're making a festive, delicious eggnog cake. So let's get started. First off, set your oven to 350 so it's nice and hot. And now in a large bowl, we're gonna combine our dry ingredients, starting with 3 cups or 360 grams of all-purpose flour. Perfect. One thing that can go wrong for this cake is using too much flour, so use a scale if you can. If you're using measuring cups, fluff your flour up, sprinkle it in, and level it off. Never scoop. To puff things up, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 and 2. Our eggnog cake needs some warming spices, so add 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, ground please, half a teaspoon of nutmeg, grated, and for contrast, half a teaspoon of salt. I will say you could add any of your favorite warming spices. 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of cardamom, of allspice, even a little bit of cloves or mace would be nice. Our scale's done. We're gonna give this a mix, so let's grab a whisk. Whisk, whisk, whisk. Really distribute all of those spices as well as the baking powder. You want your cake to rise evenly. And by the way, if you like my videos, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. There's 2 new recipes every single week, and there's always something delicious on the horizon. This is mixed up nicely. I'm going to set that aside and grab my stand mixer. Into the bowl of my stand mixer, fitted with a paddle attachment or a large bowl if you're using a hand mixer, you're gonna add 1 cup or 226 grams of room temperature unsalted butter. So room temperature just means that you can indent into it easily with a little bit of pressure, and the butter will bend nicely as well. If you're making this on a cold day, room temperature does not mean your ambient temperature. You might have to microwave your butter in like 10-second increments just until it's softened at half power. Plop that in. To sweeten things up and soften the cake, I want 1 1/4 cups or 250 grams of granulated sugar. If you haven't had an eggnog cake, by the way, you get all of that like warm, spiced, rummy deliciousness in the form of a wonderful bundt cake. It's perfect for holiday snacking. I also want 3/4 cup or 165 grams of light brown sugar. Press that in if you're using a measuring cup. The brown sugar is gonna give you a lovely note of caramel that really pairs well with the rum. We're gonna mix this up on medium speed until it's light and fluffy. That's about 3 to 4 minutes, and yes, you will probably scrape the bowl down at least once. Light, fluffy, and beautiful. I want you to see the texture before we add the eggs in. Look at that. It's like a beautiful light caramel cloud. 1 final scrape down. And now while the mixer's running on low, we're gonna add 4 room temperature large eggs in 1 at a time. Best practice is to crack the egg into a bowl, check for shells, and then add it in and repeat. You do not want a crunchy shell moment in your cake, no. You can always give 1 little tap at high power to get that butter off of your beater. Next egg. Halfway through, we are gonna scrape down. This is where you're adding a ton of liquid into your batter, and we want it to be incorporated really well with no compacted butter sugar moments at the bottom. No, not on my cake. Egg number 3. By the way, this cake is such a good use for leftover eggnog. I always have some in the fridge around the holidays, and like, do I want to drink more or make a delicious cake with it? And the answer is cake. Today we're gonna be using store-bought eggnog. However, if you have not experienced the magic of homemade eggnog, you are really, really missing out. So that recipe is on the blog, and I don't know if we ever redid it, but it was actually my very first long form YouTube video I ever made. And it is so shockingly bad. We can all learn things, and I did. I did redo it, but the original one is still up there. I scraped the bowl down, my eggs are all in, and now we're gonna add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Just plop that in. And let that mix in. My butter mixture is done, my dry mixture is done, and now I have two delicious things, eggnog and rum. If you're using homemade eggnog, you don't need to add more rum. You should have plenty in there already. You want 1 1/4 cup altogether. So this is 1 cup of eggnog and 1/4 cup of rum. Dark spiced rum, please. Give it a little mix. With our mixer running on low, we are gonna add 1/3 of the dry mixture, followed by 1/2 of the eggnog, and then repeat that until it's all done. This is the other part where your recipe can go left. If you overmix your batter, instead of having a tender, melt in your mouth crumb, it's gonna be gummy, gluey, dense, and sad. Nobody wants that. It even changes the way the flavor is tasted on your tongue because it's not dissolving on the palate, it's like a little lump that you have to swallow. But do not overmix. About 1 cup of the dry mixture, sprinkle that in, mix it on low, and add in 1/2 of the wet. Turn it off and repeat. Another cup of the dry, add the remaining wet mixture, or add the remaining eggnog. I'm gonna take a moment now to scrape down this bowl, which smells deliciously of rum. Just make sure there's no butter or flour lurking around at the bottom. I'm gonna add the remaining flour in right now. And if you wanted this to have no alcohol in it at all, that's fine. Just use 1 1/4 cups of eggnog like you buy from the market. Mix it up. Now you're gonna stop, and there's still streaks of flour hanging out. That is fine. I will finish this off with my spatula. Use your spatula and just make sure that your mixture is streak-free and doesn't have any really liquidy pockets. Just fold it all together and stop, hands down. No overmixing for us. Set that aside and grab your 12-cup bundt pan. Your bundt pan needs to be well prepped. You do not want this sticking. That would be so sad. So you can either butter and flour it or use baking spray, and today I'm gonna go the quick and easy way. Get all the nooks and crannies. And now you can either spoon or carefully transfer your batter into your bundt pan. The smell from this is so good, it's wild. Use a small spatula or offset and just shimmy that batter around and get rid of any air bubbles that you could find. You can give it a bit of a shimmy and even tap it on the counter or the floor over a towel. Our eggnog cake is ready to go into the oven, 350 for about an hour or until a skewer inserted in the center comes out clean. While this bakes, we're gonna make a delicious eggnog glaze. There you go. So I actually waited for my cake to cool before I made the glaze. If you make your glaze in advance, that's fine. Just cover the bowl so it's airtight, otherwise it'll harden on top and form a skin. Into a larger bowl, you want 2 1/4 cups of confectioner's sugar, that's 270 grams. Perfect. 1/4 cup of eggnog, 2 teaspoons of dark rum, and 2 tablespoons of melted butter. One note is it's actually a good idea to let the butter cool down a lot. The cooler your butter is, the thicker the consistency of the glaze. If the butter is screaming hot, your glaze will just drip down. Adding butter to a glaze completely changes the taste. It becomes so rich and lovely, so I highly recommend a couple tablespoons of butter whenever you make any glaze. We're gonna mix this together until it's nice and smooth. You could do this by hand if you wanted, but it's much faster with an electric mixer. That is a lovely consistency. It's time to spoon your glaze all over the top and watch those beautiful drips form. I'm finishing this off with a garnish of nutmeg. You could add cinnamon or any of your favorite spices, or leave it plain. Your eggnog cake will last up to 5 days in the fridge in an airtight container, or you can wrap it really well and freeze it for up to 3 months. Give your cake a cut, and just like that, it's ready to enjoy. Soft and tender with amazing notes of rum and all those warming spices. I hope you get a chance to make this recipe, and if you like my videos, hit that subscribe button and check out my Christmas playlist.